Alright, good evening everyone out there in Cyberland, and a happy Angry Ghost Month to all of you. I'm your host, Robert Rubin, and welcome back to Mysterium After Dark. Now we've got some pretty interesting topics to discuss with you tonight. Basically, our segment, thanks to our director, Mr. Chardlig Sai, is all about psychic safety and awareness. And with Ghost Month being just around the corner, depending on when you're watching this, right at your doorstep, it's going to be pretty helpful for all of you to understand some basics of psychic self-defense, some safety measures, and some awareness things to make sure that you're not just hocus-pocusing certain realities into your life. Today's segment, we're going to be talking more about also how to keep yourself safe, especially during times like now, Ghost Month, a lot of paranormal activity happening. How to tell if it's all in your head or if it's actually an occurrence, but at the same time, how to tell if somebody actually did something to you genuinely or not. All this is pretty much coming up tonight here on Mysterium After Dark, so stay tuned, everyone. So, for starters, let's talk about basics of psychic awareness. Now, before we go any further, there is really one thing that I want to get off the table for all of you. And that's the role that paranoia and phobia plays in any form of psychic paranormal encounter. I've had a lot of people come to me saying, I feel I'm cursed. I feel someone is trying to enter my mind. I feel someone sending negative energy my way. And if you're feeling that way, you have a right to feel that way. But the one thing I tell my clientele is never feed it with personal paranoia. Never conclude on your own that some ancient black magician has hexed you. Never conclude on your own, unless of course you're educated enough, that somebody is astrally projecting and trying to harm you. Because just the mere thought of these things, if you give it too much life, can actually create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, for starters, we're going to talk about these things from an educational level. We're going to talk to them, we're going to talk about these topics to give you the information you need so you have a good idea. Is someone actually or likely doing these things, or are they all just a figment of my imagination? Now, one of the rules for this show is 2 times can be considered coincidence. 3 or more, as the number increases, most likely you have a phenomenon. Example, if today while skateboarding I slipped and fell and I lost my wallet, that could be considered a coincidence. But if all in one day I was skateboarding, I broke my leg, my wife left me, my house burned down to the ground, I got fired from a job and I found out that I have diabetes. That's kind of one horrible shitstorm to happen all in one day. So when we go past the magic number of 2 upwards, chances are coincidence is kind of out the window, and a pattern can be noticed. In most likely cases, something supernatural could be happening. Now, don't jump off the bat right away and say, well, I'm cursed. How do we know that? Or an angry spirit is doing this to me. Again, how do we know that? So for this segment, we're actually going to elaborate on this a bit more. Let's start off with your basic curse. Okay, here in the Philippines, we call it kulam. Okay, somebody made kulam to me. Now, Linky in the background, what's the basic understanding of kulam? What's the definition of it?
It's basically witchcraft.
Witchcraft.
Malevolent kind.
Malevolent witchcraft.
You know, with a doll.
Oh, so like voodoo doll and shit like that. So basically, any kind of negative attacks done to you magically in the Philippines is considered kulam. But in Western practitioners, or in Western practices, we call it a hex, a curse, a jinx, whatever you want to call it. Now, before you go ahead and jump to a conclusion, say, well, I've been kulam, I've been hexed, I've been cursed. The first thing I'm always going to ask you is this. Do you have reasonable doubt to consider, did someone actually curse you? Do you know someone with enough motive and ability to curse you? Let me elaborate. And a lot of this is featured in my book, Defensive Occultism. Just because you angered a guy with long hair who does sounds, who may look like a black magician, doesn't necessarily mean he worships the devil, okay? And he can send black magic your way. For all you know, he's just some sort of musician or something like that. So just because you cut this guy off in traffic doesn't necessarily mean he's immediately going to cast the pulsa de nora on you. From my own experiences, I've learned this. A lot of mages want the easiest way possible. and they won't bother doing any form of aggressive magic to you. Unless, of course, you've done something really horrible to them. Like, example for me, if you cut me off in traffic, if you were snobbish to me, you're more likely to get clocked in the head by me than for me to go out of my way to karmically cast a spell or hex you. Alright? So always keep that in mind, that unless, of course, you did something really horrible to someone, in most cases, people will not bother to send any form of magical attacks your way. Now, example, if you ruined the livelihood of a particular family of sorcerers and left them in poverty and they're all dying of hunger and malnourishment now, that could actually make more sense to believe, well, yeah, maybe I did piss these guys off and maybe they are hexing me. So that basically focuses on keeping the proper mindset. Did you do somebody with the capability of doing any form of kulam to you or any form of witchcraft, sorcery, magic negatively upon you? If you did, then you have reason to believe, okay, I was cursed. It's almost tantamount to saying, well, the terrorists are out to get me. Really? Well, did you piss the terrorist off? Yes or no? I pissed off the guy at Ababu, the Turkish shawarma stand. Stereotypes aside, just because the guy looks Arabic doesn't necessarily mean he's a terrorist. Okay? More importantly, just because you didn't tip him doesn't mean he's gonna blow up your house even if he was a terrorist. So think in those levels. Think in that direction, that if you did something that merits an aggressive action from a practitioner, then likely you will get it. Okay? But if you did something minor that wasn't to be pretty much considered in the long run, chances are they'll just leave you alone. So more on this topic when we come back.